Hi, everyone. Welcome to another mental health moment. Thanks so much for being with us today. We
Again,
really appreciate your time. My name is Linda Gowler.
I am disappointed too, as
that everyone be sure to mute themselves. There we go. Perfect. Really appreciate that. So my name is Linda Gowlick. I am the health and well-being consultant here at Bellin Health, and we have been very, very fortunate to partner with our behavior health therapist, Charles Latour, to bring these very impactful segments. So Charles is with us again today. Charles, how are you?
Very good. How about you, Linda?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So Charles, I just really
okay.
Again today.
Okay, fine.
I can't help but notice that I think that we've been in the COVID world for a while. There's been a lot that has happened. People are now doing a lot of virtual learning with their children. Some people are still working remotely. Some people are out in the workforce, face-to-face with people every day. A lot of coverage, especially here in Wisconsin. So I really think that we are seeing a ton of COVID fatigue. I think we're all kind of a little bit tired of talking about it, hearing about it, and I can see the stress levels and people rising. So what are you noticing in your work, Charles, in terms of COVID fatigue?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of it. I've seen it everywhere from kids to adults. I would say the number one factor influencing the families at this time since the return to school started in the array of fashions that it's been experimented with. How do we get all the things done that we need to get done in the COVID era? How do we take care of school virtually? How do we get everything done? How do we support our children, our family, and so forth? But it's the exhaustion that I'm seeing that people are just, I just can't wait till they get back to school, or we know what's going to happen. The continued uncertainty. How long do I have to wear the mask? How long until we can go out to eat? How long until it's basically a normal again? And then people are asking the question of what will be the new normal? Is this what it is? And we have to get used to it, or it's just still a matter of patience that we have until it passes and then we go back? I think the question mark around that is the number one thing that is impacting people and where that takes them in their thinking and their outlook. Where is this going to go? But if I were to be backed into a corner, the school edition has been the number one thing that has ratcheted up COVID-initiated emotional reactions, I would say.
So certainly our event today, very timely in helping people maybe figure out some coping mechanisms to deal with that COVID fatigue that everyone is feeling in some way, shape, or form. So ironically, two very important holidays going on, maybe not holidays, but important days that are happening just in sync with us doing this session today. So first of all, we have National Depression Screening Day is actually today, October 8th. And I just wanted to share some information with everybody, and I'm going to put this in the chat. You can actually text the word "screen me" to 31996, and that's going to take you to a screening tool that you're going to be able to do an assessment on yourself and just kind of see if there's something you could use some help with. It's going to give you a little guidance. I went on today, and there were a lot of really neat screening tools that you can use. The other thing that's happening that we were talking about earlier, Charles and I were, is that October 10th is actually World Mental Health Day, and that is something that the World Health Organization actually has an event on, and you can visit that website, and we'll be sending that website out with a follow-up as well. But there's a ton of great resources on the World Health Organization page, not just COVID information, but really that mental well-being. And one thing that I came across today was there's actually this cool little illustrated guide it's a illustration doing what matters in times of stress. And it actually goes through these different categories, and there's audio recordings to go with this. But I think this could be super helpful, not only for adults, but for children, helping them with some of the coping mechanisms that they can do in these times of stress. So they talk about things like unhooking, acting on your values, being kind, and those types of things. So Charles, why is it so important for us to really recognize something like a World Mental Health Day?
Yeah, well, great question, first of all. And I think more than anything, I would say there's several reasons, but the most important thing to me and why this has been so important, and by the way, just a little background, for the last X number of years, I have been asked to do presentations at different facilities with this topic in mind, and the whole World Mental Health Day. My hope is that it's catching on, more people become aware, and I'm so glad that we're making it a focal point of our conversation today. And in part because if I asked everybody on this call, pardon me, the number one reason from a health diagnostic standpoint in our great world that people are on disability, the number one reason people are deemed or termed disabled, what would your answer be to that question? You take a second, think to yourself, of all of the difficulties that plague us in our great, wonderful world, it's depression. It was estimated that by 2030, it would become number one, comparatively speaking to all of the other illnesses, so forth. By 2017, we already reached that place. We can do better. And the other reason to me that World Mental Health Day is so important is it is the one group, there's many other ones, but this is the primary one that puts on the radar screen the single factor that I think is most important, and hopefully we can talk more about this, and that is stigma. The stigma around mental health and where it takes its place, mental health, in comparison to the rest of the healthcare world. Not just by people, but sometimes even other healthcare professionals. But I think more than anything else, it puts on the radar screen and gives one day a year that we can look at how important our mental health is to our overall well-being and understand the effect that it has on who we are, not just as individuals, but as a society. And for that reason, I think this day is ultra important to us.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important that you brought up the idea of the stigma, because I think as much as we try to bring light to the mental health components, to the idea that mental well-being is so valuable and so important in balancing one's existence, there is still that stigma. There is still that stigma behind it. So I think something like this day is a great way for people to recognize and to also feel validated. If we have people in our audience or you know people that are struggling right now, know that you are not alone. You are not the only one that is struggling right now. And Charles and I talked a lot the other day about we see mental health and mental well-being as important as physical health and physical well-being. And Charles, if you wouldn't mind sharing, why do you feel that way in your practice?
Yeah, a number of reasons, and I think it's so critical. And to me, this is, I think, the intersection between mental health and physical health is so much bi-directional, and one is always affecting the other. The brain is always connecting with the body is always connecting with the brain. It's really one system. And we, I think, have done a disservice by separating it and seeing mental health as different. And I think we almost raise our generations with this in mind. There's a great video of a guy named, a TED Talk video, Guy Winch talks about this dynamic where he first noticed, he was visiting family member, little 5-year-old kid, got a little cut, reached into the medicine cabinet, took out a pack of Band-Aids, bandaged his injury, and then went on. And it's like he understood the nature of this injury, protect yourself, take care of yourself, avoid infection, and it made him pause, and the question becomes, do we know to do any of that with psychological injuries, rejection, failure, fear of failure, those sort of things? And almost any other injury that we receive, people are like, well, what are you going to do? What can we do about it? How can I help? When it seems that it's mental, it's shake it off. We don't tell someone to shake off a leg injury. We don't tell someone to just shake it off. I see if you're bleeding, shake it off. But psychological things, shake it off. You know, that sort of thing, I think, has perpetuated this stigma, which is the invisible illnesses, like depression is, that affects 25% of the disability of humanity. I mean, we definitely, I think, could do better at addressing emotional, psychological first aid in a greater way in life, maybe never exactly the way that we do physical first aid, but there's definitely room for improvement. And the last thing I'll say about it is when people come into my office and they tell me, like, what brings you in, most of them will say, in fact, this happened 3 times yesterday, I really didn't think I needed to be here. I didn't want to think I needed to be here. Is that we don't think that with other injuries, but when it's psychological, is I thought I was either tougher than this, or I thought I can get through it on my own. With a broken arm, we don't want to get through that on our own. We want the best health care we can get. But when it's psychological, it seems to be different still. And I'm going to read one thing, kind of the last thing I'd like to say on this. Kendall Jenner, Adele, the great singer Adele, Ryan Reynolds, sexiest man alive, according to People magazine, great actor, one of the most beautiful women ever. I think she was sexiest woman alive. Chrissy Teigen, Beyonce, one of the greatest performers ever. Miley Cyrus, Lena Durham, Dakota Johnson, Demi Lovato, Carrie Fisher, Ellen DeGeneres, J.K. Rowling, the great author of all the Harry Potter books, Kerry Washington, Halle Berry, Princess Diana, Prince Harry, Katy Perry, Glenn Close, Andre Agassi, the great tennis player, Kevin Love, the great basketball player, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the great actor. I could keep going. I'm not going to because I think you get the message. What do these people all have in common? Mental health issues, to which they came out and spoke against the stigma, and being able to say, if I can identify that I have this and I can seek treatment, we can do the same thing. There's another thing I want to say about it, but I'll pause, Linda, and see if you have any comments with what I've just mentioned and how you can hear how important this is to me.
I think one thing that I'm wondering, Charles, to really think about, how do people know? How do people know when they should maybe seek that further help or that further assistance?
Yeah, and fabulous question, and I'll preface it with this. That is different for everybody, and it is really hard to know. And stigma keeps us from knowing. And I guess the last thing I'll say about stigma, the list of people that I just read off suffering from mental health issues, I think all of them are still alive. There's another list of those who are deceased, and they died from suicide, and the biggest factor that keeps people from seeking help is the stigma around actually needing it. And that's why this is so important. To me, if there was one thing that I could say in your own defining of do I need help or don't I, is what I am doing working? Is what I am doing to help myself, getting me to be more the person I want to be, the person I want to become, the healthiest, physically and emotionally best version of me and all that's possible for me based on what I've experienced? Or is what I've experienced and how I'm feeling keeping me from being the best me, the best version of myself, all that's possible for me, the best husband, the best dad, the best wife, the best mom, the best friend, whatever it is, best coworker? If I'm becoming more of that through what I've experienced, I'm probably doing all right and on the right track. If I am not, and it doesn't have to be a night and day, I'm doing great or I'm doing terrible, but if I'm not becoming more of who I want to be through this, that would be a great time to go and talk to somebody and maybe get on track to go in the direction where you would like it to go.
Well, I heard something on a podcast the other day, and they were talking about this same idea of just people being tired and the anxiety and the worry and everything that everyone has going on. And the host of that podcast said simply, is what you're doing working for you? If you feel crappy and you just keep doing the same things that you're doing, you need to change something. Something needs to change. And of course, as we know, we can't control things outside of ourselves all the time. We have to look at what we ourselves can control. So I think there's some real power there if we decide I need to change something. Just for myself recently, I again have gone to shunning the social media a little bit more because I notice that when I go on it, it just makes me angry and upset, and it makes me worry more. So I know that I just need to take some of that out of my day in order for me to feel better. So even those little tweaks, I think, can make a huge difference. So if we circle back then, Charles, if we talk about going back to that whole idea of COVID fatigue, because certainly I would think there's people with us today that maybe aren't so worried about a full mental illness that they may have going on, but they do have some anxiety and some worry and some insomnia and some things just worrying about everything that's going on. What are your recommendations on what people can do to help themselves?
Yeah, I did a program on this just the other day, and it hopefully will be coming out soon in the Bellin system, but here's one thing that I will say. I mean, it tells this recommendation by way of a story. So I call this tip phone a friend, all right? Kind of a goofy twist on in utilization of the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. But this video that I was referencing, and hopefully we can put this out to everybody, but this guy talks about coming from Europe and leaving all family and friends from Europe to come to the United States for university, right? And doesn't have much money, is relegated to 5 minutes a week to talk to his twin brother, closer, great love of each other, and now separated for the first time in their lives. And on his birthday, he and his brother had agreed to call each other. And he waited all night. The call never came. He describes it as the longest night of his life. waiting and waiting, and it lead him to think that, I'm here by myself, I'm lonely, he's still with all family and friends, not necessarily separated. I got lonely and I miss him, but he doesn't miss me, that's why he didn't call. Goes to bed, miserable, barely can sleep. The next day, he recognizes that his phone wasn't completely on the receiver. As soon as he actually put it on the receiver, and by the way, modern day equivalent will be phone charged probably, or airplane mode off, but in this case, as soon as he put it back on, the phone rang a couple minutes later, and it was his brother, who was worried sick about him. Like, I tried calling you all night, where were you? And the brother said, well, I was waiting for you, and you never called. And I was missing you so much, and just was waiting and waiting and waiting, and you never called. And the brother, the other twin back in Europe, said, well, if you missed me that much and you were waiting all night, why didn't you just pick up the phone and call me? And he thought, well, that's a great question. Why didn't I? And the reason he didn't, as he thought about it, he was lonely. When we're lonely and we're a little bit more isolated, in the time that we are in, this is ripe for that. What happens when we're lonely and maybe even a little depressed is we don't make that call. We wait for someone else to make it. And if we're in this waiting place, we're in this communication impasse. And when we're a little bit lonely, what don't we want to do? Fear risking being rejected. So we don't make the call. So we're at this impasse. We don't reach out. Maybe someone else is feeling the same way. But if we can notice that, be aware of that, and be able to work through that and say, you know what, I'm going to call this person anyway. And there's a good chance that the reaction on that end is going to be to say, oh my gosh, it's so great to hear from you. I've been actually meaning to call you too. Thank you so much for the call, and there's a connection. What we need right now is greater social connectedness in this physical distancing, because I've said it before, this is physical distancing, not social distancing. We need to be more socially connected now than we have ever been because of what we're going through. And the simple act and art isn't so simple. But if we understand of picking up the phone and making a call, but if we can look through that and say, I'm not going to let this fear of rejection get in the way of me making this connection. Social connectedness is what's going to get us through this. And the fatigue of what we're going through is the greatest barrier to that connectedness. So to me, that is that human connection. There's no substitution for it. It'd be greater if we could do it together, but sometimes the phone or some other medium that you described is the next best thing. So that's a strategy in and of itself. So thanks. Great question, Linda.
I love that because it takes my mind back to one of the things I saw early on when the virus first started taking off was the quarantine questions. And one of the questions on there is, who am I connecting with today? And what a valuable question for us to ask ourselves every single day, that even if we're not physically with people, we can still connect. And it's actually kind of fun. Like, go through your phone, look at your contact list, and think, well, who haven't I talked to in a while? And who would it be fun to talk to? So I think that we just often don't think of those things as we're getting busy and we have all these other things going on. So.
Yeah, in fact, let me say a quick thing on that. What I have found I would even say this last 3 months, maybe even if we count June, what people have told me more than anything else is what's missing, like what they don't feel and want to feel, and what is simple, sometimes even a text, a phone call even better, but it's the attempt. Someone cared. You cared about me to do this. You thought about me. You were interested in me. And here's partly why this is so great. And I've mentioned this on another mental health moment, but you can see how it all comes together this way, is when we show we're interested, invested, we care enough to do this, no matter who it is, especially if it's someone, what people have done and told me is what you just said, Linda, is I've scrolled through and who haven't I shot a text to lately? But I'm curious how they're doing through this. Even if it's as simple to see how you're dealing with what we're going through. And then they send something back, and then sometimes even that leads to a phone call. The fact that we cared, acted on the caring, demonstrating care, concern for someone else, all that means is you meant something to them, they meant something to you. It gives them a sense of meaning and connectedness. And that caring and that they mattered to you counts for more than anything else. And it isn't just taken for granted that they're out there. You showed that you cared enough about them and they meant enough to you to do it. And that's what people are needing the most at this time, that sense of meaning that we have for each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to really connect with people and show people you care, and also help yourself at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we do want to take your questions. So if you do have a question for us, you can either chat it for everyone, or if you want to send it to me privately, that's fine too. So you can just send it to Linda Golick or to everyone, or to Maureen Husen as well, and we will take those questions. But Charles, while people are maybe thinking about and maybe typing in their questions if they have any, what are any other thoughts or things that you wanted to share with us today, things that you feel are really important for us all to remember and know right now?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One, I do want to come back to a little bit of the stigma is and every now and then I look for different ways to talk about this. And on my way to work today, if anybody listens to 91.1, there's a song by Paul Simon called The Rewrite. And I think the most important thing in the world of mental health right now is we need a rewrite on the narrative of stigma. We need to look at mental health as integrated as part of our health rather than a separate thing in the way we look at it and treat it. And whatever we can do in the rewrite of the narrative of how we look at mental health, every time we get to think about that is one more opportunity to look at it differently than we have. Because my sincerest hope, in the long run, I know we're not there today, I'm not kidding myself that we are, but my sincerest hope is that there is one day where we practice and we attend and we take seriously with the same vigor and consistency the care that we have for our mental health that we do for our own physical health. I hope that day isn't too far off, but any time we get to go in that direction is a great day.
I totally agree, Charles. I think they're all so interwoven, and it's tough to do one without the other. You really need to have it all. So I do have a question.
I don't think we have physical health without mental health.
Agreed. I don't think so either. I don't think you're going to feel like doing the things that you need to care for your body if you don't have the stability of the mental well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here's the question that somebody typed in, Charles. It says, do you know if anyone has produced or do you know of any resources about how to help kids that are struggling with the virtual learning? Anything that we know of that can help kids that are struggling with virtual learning?
Yeah, so let me say two things about that. One is I hope that whoever put the question forward that it's going better, because one of the things that in this last month has taught me, I've asked every teenager that I see that is dealing with this, is last year, if you compared and contrast last year to this year, of the spring semester to the start of the fall semester, they've all said almost, I would say 98%, it's a lot better because the teachers have gotten much better. It felt like nothing but busy work to them last year when no one didn't know what to do other than let's just throw stuff to them. Now that it's an actual, most of it is a teacher in a classroom and they're actually listening to the person live, then it becomes what's missed when I'm not physically there rather than I'm just doing busy work on my own, which was better than nothing, but this is even a step better in the right direction. So there's a couple different things. So I'm going to hit this in two ways, teenagers and then younger children. So with teenagers, it's being able to communicate. What I found is the biggest hurdle is they're okay with this as it is now, the new system online. Their struggle is how much they can partner with other kids in the class who seem to learn at a similar level or so forth, something in that respect. We can't partner, I can't ask you this question. I've heard this 1,000 times. Just that one little thing that I say, boy, did you get that note, or let me do this, it can make all the difference in the world. The other difference is accessibility to the teacher. That one little question that you may have asked them on the way out of the classroom, on the way to the next one, those little things like that that students do, that's what they're missing. So I'm encouraging them to find ways to still do that. Still reach out to the teacher afterwards, shoot an email. And they're all saying, we want you to email me, still talk, even offline meetings, a 10-minute at the end of the day. You can still do those things even though you're not there. So that's one thing. The second thing with the teenagers, and this is on them, but a lot of them will admit it, my phone or my computer. It's so easy because I'm doing this class on the computer that all I got to do is check in and I'm on a screen. But now I could do whatever I want as long as I'm on here. And the discipline to not go there is, I'm telling people, if you want this to feel like it's in a classroom, don't go online to something else. Stay in the setting and take it as a challenge to be able to focus on it in that way. So I think with the younger kids, prior to teenage years, a lot of it does come down to distractibility of what else is in the home, the other creature comfort, whether it's toys, distractions, sometimes even food. What's mom doing if she's home? What's dad doing if she's home? Distractions, the more that we can eliminate those, the better. I think one specific place where they do it can be a very settling and routine creating event for them, just like they like to create routines at school. Those sorts of things will be helpful. But the main thing, even for younger kids, is still devices and other toys. Anything that they can log into or get distracted by, I think are things that would be helpful to eliminate and create as much of a school setting as possible. And with the hope that before too long, that this is something that isn't a continuation, but we could go back to the way things were. So great question, whoever put that forward.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Charles. Because I'm glad of folks that are in that and trying to figure all that out. So I don't see any other.
Can I add one more thing to that, Linda, for the people on the call is one thing that I have seen that the families that I've seen benefit most from this, rather than get thrown off as much by this, is parents have found it a little bit more necessary to be even more in touch with what is happening. Is let's look at your work. Let's review it together. Since you don't have a peer sometimes to do that with, let me become the person that you run something by, or I'll encourage you to talk to a teacher. So it does require, not for everybody, but for some people, a little bit more parental involvement, especially for parents which is typically a good strategy. I leave this up to them. You know, this is their work. I'm trying to stay out of it unless they need me. Sometimes being a little bit more involved might not be a bad thing. And sometimes even if the student may not feel they want or need that, over time they come to get used to it and appreciate that parental involvement. As long as it's continuing to be supportive, helpful, and understanding rather than critical, because if it goes from critical to argumentative, and then there's just one more way for us to have an argument every night, obviously that might not be that helpful, but in the way I'm describing it, I've seen it be very productive and beneficial for many families.
Absolutely, and I think too that kids often are really excited if parents want to be involved too, if they want to know what they're doing. So that may also be the response from your child. They may be really excited to tell you everything that's going on. So perfect. All right, so I don't see any other questions. So just to kind of wrap us up here today, just a reminder, I'm going to put this in the chat again, for that screening, you can text screen me to 31996. And then also, Maureen is going to put up this link for us on the World Mental Health Day. So again, that's going to be October 10th. Lots of great resources on that webpage. Like I showed earlier, doing what matters in time of stress. That was just one little thing I found that I thought would be super helpful. And go ahead and look at that. But there will be actual things going on that day. It sounds like there will be some celebrities involved in promoting that event. So lots of good stuff that you can look forward to. And you can also tune into some of that on the World Health Organization social media pages. So if you look them up on Facebook or LinkedIn or those types of things, you'll find that as well. So another great segment, Charles. Thank you so much for being with us. Again, we're trying to do these once a month, always the second Thursday of the month at 1 o'clock. We'll continue to bring those great topics to everyone. Any other parting thoughts or words today, Charles?
I would just say this at the end. One, just because the people who are on this call, I think it does demonstrate that this is on people's radar screen, that mental health is as important to our well-being as anything else, and that our brain is our superpower and how we manage who we are and what we're about, and that we keep striving to be the best ourselves as we move forward. So I'm just grateful for everybody's taking time out to be able to make sure that this is important to them. And thank you for the questions and the responses along the way. So continued good luck to everybody as we get through this unprecedented, difficult time, and appreciate everybody's involvement. And last thing I would say is if you check out the World Mental Health Day website and some of the things Linda has sent out, I think you'll find it very rewarding to take the time to do that as well. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Charles. And I just want to tell everybody to hang in there. You are not alone. We are here for you. We're going to continue to bring you these resources. We are all going to get through this together. So have a great rest of the day and hope to see the rest of you very soon. We will send out this recording with the links that we talked about as well. So have a great day, everyone. Bye, Charles.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Take care. Thanks, Linda.